Alfred Lord Tennyson, book on 922. Very famous individual. His piece In Memoriam was very, very famous, as we read in our introductory material. He liked it, but as well as all of these other queens and so on, they enjoyed his work as well. An interesting thing about him is I like the right-hand column when it talks about that. When an acquaintance of his had died, of a stroke, he fell into a deep and long depression. Nearly a decade passed before he published any poetry. However, he wrote some of his most significant poems during this period, perfecting his craft, during which he later called his 10 years of silence. Just because he's not publishing to the outside world doesn't mean that he's not writing. He's not working on his craft. I don't know if you've ever noticed some of the most popular musicians and so on, they kind of have a troubled past. You know what I mean? I just watched, there's a Pearl Jam documentary, that Cameron Crowe, the guy that did Almost Famous and different movies like that. And just listening to the pain that, the lead singer Eddie Vedder went through as a kid. Some of his most famous works were based on some real hardships. Like he found out when he was 12 or 13 that the person that he thought was his dad wasn't his dad. It was somebody else. By the time he went to find that other guy, he had died. And so he missed out on really knowing his father. And that really influenced one of his first songs, Alive, on their first album as a band. And I mean, it's just, wow, such a powerful song, and it's so famous for it, and yet he had to suffer in order to get it. And so artists tend to kind of really take what's, their feelings in life, and this individual more so than some of the others that we've dealt with so far. Queen Victoria appointed Tennyson to succeed William Wordsworth as poet laureate, so like her chief poet, so that means pretty famous. And if you remember, Wordsworth was the Tintern Abbey that we read in the last unit. So some big name people. This is one of those guys that in a Jeopardy question, for the the 19th century, he would be a good one just to throw out there if you have no idea. Okay, so Alfred Lord Tennyson, pretty famous. The first poem that we're going to go over is really short. It's called Crossing the Bar. As you see, it says that at 81, Tennyson wrote this poem, and just a few days before his death, he asked that it be placed at the end of every edition of his work. So any publication of his from here on out, if they followed his wishes, I don't know if legally they had to or not, but they put this particular poem at the very end. No matter if it was being repeated over and over, if they just took different poems and threw them in a binding, they would have to put this one in there as well. And him being 81, him being close to probably the end of his life, and then looking at the message in this particular poem, I think we can all see why. This is probably one of the easiest poems to understand and comprehend that I think we have in this class. So see if you can follow along what he's talking about and look at what the metaphor is. What's the symbolism that he's trying to make a connection to? Okay, now that we know a little bit about him and about his feelings about death and the feelings and the background of him being old and wanting this put at the very end of his books, what does that kind of say? So follow along, please.
Crossing the Bar by Alfred Lord Tennyson. Sunset and evening star, and one clear call for me, and may there be no moaning of the bar when I put out to sea, but such a tide as moving seems asleep, too full for sound and foam, when that which drew from out the boundless deep turns again home. Twilight and evening bell, and after that the dark, and may there be no sadness of farewell when I embark. For though from out our bourne of time and place the flood may bear me far, I hope to see my pilot face to face when I have crossed the bar.
Right from the beginning, the first stanza. Hopefully, and may there be no moaning of the bar when I put out to sea. When we say bar, a sandbar. Everybody know what a sandbar is? When I was growing up, we went up to a lake on a few times. We'd take the pontoon out and go swim in the middle where there was, for some reason, a sandbar. It looks like you should sink, but yet you're it's up to your knees or your waist or so on. A lot of times you see sandbars, especially down off beaches and so on, because of tides. There's a place in Florida where you might go out, we call it shelling, out looking for shells. And you walk out 50 yards. You might have to swim a little bit, but there's a sandbar out there. And so you look out, and it's half a football field, and it looks like people are walking on the water because there's a sandbar. It's that kind of, well, it is an optical illusion, but yeah, it's truly happening. And it's pretty cool. But anyways, so we talk about him pretty much, leaving the beach and going out. But such a tide as moving seems asleep, too full for sound and foam, when that which drew from out the boundless deep turns again home. So remember, tides go in, they crash against the shore, and then what do? They pull back out, don't they? Okay? And so in reference to this and the foam and the sea, we lived our life, we're on land, but then it's pulling us back. Okay, it's pulling us back. Twilight and evening bell, and after that the dark. And may there be no sadness of farewell when I embark. And so we were saying how, he's elderly. He wants this as the last piece of any of his, works in any edition. And so we can see this talking about death. Right. Okay. For though from out our bourne of time and place the flood may bear me far, I hope to see my pilot face to face when I have crossed the bar. So as the tide is pulling him out, and he goes out past the bar, there's no weeping, no sadness while I go, and I hope to see my pilot as I cross that bar. You cross that step. You see in movies and such, when people have a near-death experience, they talk about seeing the light. That would probably be crossing the bar. Another metaphor for that. Okay? And so here it's, I'm going out to sea. Once I cross that bar, I cease to live anymore. And they say the pilot. Look at that. It's a proper noun. What's he talking about? Hope to see my pilot. Who do we think he means? Satan? Boy, I hope I see Satan there when I die. No. God. And I think it's a little bit of a hint, the fact that it is capitalized. It is that proper noun. And it should pop out. Okay? So a really short poem, pretty basic. You can see how this would be a good last poem of his to have. And if he had such a strong connection to it, it's understandable why he would want this as the very last piece in any of his editions from here on out. Yeah, I like that line, 9 and 10. Twilight and evening bell, and after that the dark. So it's like your day is running out of time. The sun goes down, but there's still some light, isn't there? But then it's slowly going away, and you know eventually what's going to happen. Darkness. Your life starts to run out. Sometimes you sense it, sometimes you don't. But after that, it's darkness. It's done. So hopefully there's no crying when I embark, when I leave, and I hope to see my pilot there. Nice, peaceful way to go. Okay? So very famous poem there.